Later, he gets the rebound, passes it to the man, shoots it, and boom goes the dynamite.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado.
And I am Dan Simon, broadcasting from the Studio Simon Stumper headquarters in Louisville, Kentucky.
Dan, today we're going to be talking about an independent professional team called the Schaumburg Boomers. You're going to be here twice on this episode. You're going to be, well, three times, really. First, here on this intro, we're saying hello, everyone, introducing the episode. Then you're going to be our featured designer. And then at the end of the episode, of course, as always, you'll have a Studio Simon Stumper for us. So a triple header. We're going to pull you from the game, bring you back in, pull you from the game, bring you back in.
Whatever I can do to help the team, I'm up for it. So that sounds good. This is an interesting one for me because you are going to see two teams relatively close to each other.
Yeah.
The Schaumburg Boomers and the Joliet Slammers. Those are both not just Studio Simon teams, but one was done the year after I did the other.
So these date back to the early 2010s. As you mentioned, I'm going to see each of those teams on separate trips. This one, you'll hear the Curved Brim Media meetup where we have, friends from all the podcasts and all the, people who listen to the podcast and friends of the show join us in different part of the country every year. We're actually going to be broadcasting live from Schaumburg later on in the episode. Ranger Amy Burnett is going to be talking about this very distinct kind of bird and the very distinct sound that it makes. We're going to learn all about that on this episode. And then in the not too distant future, Joliet is going to be part of the Baseball Palooza road trip. So I'm going to see both Schaumburg and Joliet on separate road trips this year, which is kind of funny. But the Curved Brim Media meetup will feature prominently on this episode. You will feature prominently on this episode. We're going to be speaking with Michael Larson, who is the general manager of the Schaumburg Boomers. I found him, Dan, when we were at the game. I just went downstairs to the front office and started knocking on doors. And I was just like, hey, I want to talk to somebody about the Boomers for my podcast. And he was gracious enough to let me in, first of all, to his air-conditioned office, which was very welcome because it was a super hot day game, and agreed to chat with me. So he'll be on the episode, you'll be on the episode, and then Ranger Amy will be on the episode. Dan, why don't we just get into it? We're going to have a lot of Dan on this episode. Let's just get into it. Let's go to the interviews.
I have a question I want to ask you.
One more question before we get to the interviews. Okay.
As long as there's time. You mentioned the Curved Brim Media meetup.
Yeah.
And I've always thought about that as it's the various people from the Curved Brim Media podcasts, all who get together, which sounds like a great reason for getting together.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that fans, listeners of Curved Brim Media are also invited to meet up with you guys. So how does that work? And approximately how many non-Curved Brim Media people meet up with you guys?
What we do is we just put it out on social media and we just say, hey, we're going to be at these games on these days. We all put it on our respective platforms and we just say, come one, come all. And it is growing. This year, I would say probably had about 30 to 35 people. I will say that Kelly Robinson of the Minor League Nerd got us a deal for the Chicago Dogs this year. He got us group seats and he went to all the effort to coordinate all of that. And we got free hats out of that. So that was, we were glad to be able to take advantage of our group size there. But, we've gotten to meet some really great people and people who we didn't know before who showed up and made some friends out of it. So it's been a lot of fun.
Are these people that you meet starstruck?
I don't think I would describe anyone as starstruck for meeting Curved Brim Media podcasters, but I think many of them think that it's fun to put an actual human face to the. That's the one thing I've heard is people who listen to the podcast who I've not met before, and they say, it's so weird to hear that voice coming out of an actual human face. They say some version of that because because they're used to me just being a faceless, disembodied voice in their headphones while they're running or walking or whatever. So, okay. All right, Dan, now let's go get to some interviews.
Let's do it.
welcome to Baseball by Design, Michael Larson, who is the general manager of the Schaumburg Boomers. Michael, good morning. How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I should point out that we set up this interview when I was at the Boomers game earlier this season, just a week or so ago at the time of this recording. And I wandered into your office and I said, who would I talk to about a podcast interview? And you were like, that's me. So that was, I realized, maybe something of an intrusion when it comes to setting up an interview. But I figured, hey, I'm here. I've wanted to feature this team for a while. So I was glad that you were amenable to the interview. So thank you for that.
I believe that was a 100-degree day, and I think you were just looking for air conditioning.
I'll tell you what, the air conditioning was well appreciated. Spend some time in the team store because of the air conditioning. And I'll tell you what, though, there was one spot where we were sitting behind home plate towards the back of that section there, and we had a real nice breeze coming through. It was, it kept us cool during that game for sure.
We actually call that the wind tunnel because it doesn't matter. The way the stadium design is, it doesn't matter if it's windy or not outside, there's wind there.
Well,
it comes through that spot.
It worked to our advantage that day, that's for sure. The other thing that we did that day that was really fun, and apparently this happens regularly at the ballpark, is that you could go down on the field and have a catch before the ball game. And so
yeah, every Sunday, pregame catch on the field.
That was fantastic. We had our Curved Brim Media meetup group there, so we had about 30 people there. Only about 8 or 10 of us went down on the field, but we had fun throwing the ball around on the field. So it was a really terrific ballpark and a great ball game experience in spite of the heat. And then that extra time I spent in the team store did result in a few purchases as well. So
yeah, I know the game was a little bit light on attendance that day, but it was actually better than I was expecting given the 100 degrees on a day game.
Well,
it actually surprised me.
Part of that was our Curved Brim Media meetup. That was about 30 of us there for that. So hey, this is a podcast about logos and branding, though. So I want to get into this orange and black and white brand of yours. Looks like if you were an affiliated team, you'd be an Orioles affiliate with the colors, and there's a couple of tritone hats there. The nickname, the Boomers. This is a brand that was created by Dan Simon. We'll talk to him later on in this episode. What is a Boomer? How come a team in Schaumburg, Illinois is called the Boomers?
So the Boomer is the nickname for the male prairie chicken based on the booming noise they make to lure a mate.
Okay. And is that something that you'd find in Schaumburg, Illinois?
So Schaumburg really wasn't much, like it really didn't exist in the form that it is until the boom of suburbs, 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, and then into the 80s. So most of this was for up until I would say recently, because I'm getting up there in age, but up until the 1950s, 1960s, most of this in the 70s, most of this was prairie land.
Okay.
So the prairie chicken did used to be very common here. Not anymore. I mean, but it is a nod to the history of the region.
Okay.
It is something that you'd notice too if you start paying attention. You go to the different suburbs and you go to like Arlington Heights or you go to Geneva or whatever. There's these historic downtowns. Elgin has it, and then you come to Schaumburg and you notice there isn't. It's because of how rapidly it developed post the downtown era of development, like you'd have in the late 1800s, early 1900s, where towns got big.
These are kind of distinctive looking birds, and there's a specific reason that they are called the Boomers, but it's not one that I was necessarily familiar with. I think Boomer is probably a more intimidating nickname than prairie chickens would be, but these birds are fairly interesting. Understanding that you were not there when the team was named, you've been with the team. We were chatting before we started recording. You've been with the team since 2017. This team was founded in 2012. The distinctive look of this bird is a big part of the brand. What have you learned about prairie chickens since you joined the team?
That nobody knows it's a prairie chicken, and that's I do a lot of media stuff and TV interviews, and it always ends up being like the first question of, why is there a weird bird on your logo? Going back, I wasn't here at the origination of the team name or the picking of the team colors, but over the last 7 years, I have done a lot of transforming of our logo, changing our logo's primary use and various things. One of which is not necessarily abandoning the bird. We still have the bird logo on our hats. We still incorporate it into things. But we did change up the primary logo from the six color, Schaumburg Boomers with the prairie chicken holding the bats, grass in the background. That was the historic primary logo that started in 2012 when the team started. To put a little history in the ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
The ballpark was built in 1999. There was a team here from 99 to 2010 called the Schaumburg Flyers. If we want to talk about logos, they had a completely different logo with completely different colors, none of which overlapped with the six colors that were in the Schaumburg Boomers logo.
Okay.
So when they went, they folded in 2010. The stadium sat dormant for a year. Our organization started in 2012. Well, you have a stadium that was designed for a team with maroon and blue and other colors in it. So in an effort to create a stronger brand identity, I just nixed everything that wasn't orange, black, and white and converted everything in the stadium to match that orange, black, and white motif. And that's been a major part of the brand development that we've had. As a result of doing that, the bird has kind of disappeared a little bit. We still have the mascot as the prairie chicken. We still recognize that, but we kind of just more embrace the name Boomer instead. Not as much. I mean, we have some OK Boomer T-shirts, but hence the double meaning of our primary marketing slogan that we've had for the last years of "Feel the Boom," which is to play off the team name Boomers and that booming sensation, but also feeling the sense of community and the sense of priority that's given to the fans that we put in place at the stadium. So that was a long answer that had very little to do with what you asked, but
Well, no, I appreciate it. I appreciate that history and certainly the refining of a brand over a decade and a half almost now. I was not aware of the sound that prairie chickens made. I had to have that explained to me by our wildlife correspondent Ranger Amy, and so that sort of origin of the name Boomers coming from the sound that the prairie chickens made. The prairie chicken is an interesting animal to work with for a brand. At this point, I mean, it's been 13 years, and I know that you've done all of these things to the ballpark to make it match the brand, but 13 years for a brand in minor league baseball. Has there ever been conversation about changing it up and doing something a little bit different?
That would have been a thought process I had when I first got here 6 or 7 years ago before our growth, because I mean, we've kind of almost tripled operating revenue since 2017 and grown to an almost 5,000 per night average attendance, second or third highest in all of MLB partner league baseball, and amongst the best in minor league baseball across the board. It wouldn't necessarily behoove us to blow that up and start over at this point.
Sure.
However, 7 years ago, we maybe were not necessarily in that strong position, and it would have been something to consider. I didn't embrace it at that time because of the fact that we were still fighting the fact that there was a team here previously.
Mm-hmm.
And now at that point, it becomes the third different team, at least to the general fan base and the people not with a direct knowledge of it, to join in. And then that starts to feel like you're just kind of promoting failure, like you can't do it,
Mm-hmm.
Because you keep changing and whatnot. And so instead of doing that, we took and ran with what we have, which is good. But as you're aware, there's a lot of changes in how minor league teams are named and whatnot. Mm-hmm. That was taking place at that time. Do you go with one of those more quirky, trash panda type names? But no, we went with it, rolled with it, and have enjoyed success with it since.
Sure. At the game that we attended, you all were playing the Mississippi Mud Monsters, and they have a sort of bluish green catfish. I want to say it's a catfish brand. We haven't featured them on the podcast yet, but they're one of these new teams that you're talking about.
Yeah. I do have to ask them why their day game jerseys are all black. That seemed like in playing in Mississippi, I mean, I imagine 100-degree games are like, every day.
Well, and, even in Schaumburg, Illinois, I mean, we were there, as you mentioned, during the heat dome days that they were, when that was sort of spreading across most of the country there. So yeah, like you say, it was triple digits, and yeah, they were they were indeed wearing black during that game.
Pants and shirts. Yeah.
That is pretty funny. What do you think are the biggest challenges for a team like the Boomers in terms of creating a brand, standing out in this sort of wacky minor league baseball logo landscape that we live in right now?
I feel like across baseball, sometimes people get too caught up in not knowing the difference between getting attention and
Hmm.
growing your brand.
Hmm. Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, just because you got retweeted for saying something inappropriate or saying whatever
Right.
doesn't mean you grew your brand. It can actually be very harmful.
Yeah.
And I think that that tends to be something we try our best to shy away from. We're not opposed to having fun. That's not what, you know, what I mean. But like, I would rather be known for what we do in the community
Hmm.
and known for how we treat the fans when we're at the stadium than get a bunch of extra shares on because we made ESPN for offering a contract to Tim Tebow,
Right.
which is a direct shot at my predecessors. I apologize if any of them are listening, but that was something that we got known for in 2014 or 15 or whenever it was.
Yeah.
That Tebow wanted to play baseball, and did it help us sell another ticket? No. That kind of stuff is something that, you know, I'm very protective of the brand and how we use it. There's different philosophies across everything.
Yeah.
Do you have artificial turf because you want to host as many events as possible?
Hmm.
For us, we have a grass field because we believe that baseball is to be played on grass, and that makes it a better professional product. We, in fact, not only have a grass field, we have the exact same grass as Wrigley and Guaranteed Rate. We work with Roger Bossert and we work with the groundskeeper at Wrigley. We get from the exact same sod farm, and Roger from the White Sox is the one that put our field in just a couple years ago, and we redid it, and he put the field in originally a few years back before that. You know, that's part of us dedicating towards the baseball. And from a promotion standpoint, we like to have fun promotions and do things, but I draw the line at when it impacts baseball, right? When it changes what's happening on the field.
Yeah.
If it's going to do that, I'm not interested. You know, we're not going to have, you know, the types of things that get sent to me all the time. You know, the Savannah Bananas are great at what they do for entertaining, creating the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball is basically what it is. That's not what we do, and that's not who we are. You know, I don't put people on stilts or do that kind of thing. You know, but that's all part of it. There's other forms of that. Like there's some teams that believe in having 4 major partners. You get a big sponsorship check from 4 people. You have 4 signs in the outfield or whatever, and you limit that.
Yeah.
And that's one philosophy to have. For me, I again embrace that community element. I don't know if you noticed, but there's like 40 different signs you know, around the field and then the fence. It's because every one of those is a company that operates in our community
Mm.
that wants to be a part of this. And every one of those is somebody who now has a stake in the organization. And this is part of who they are as well as who we are.
I
Yeah.
did notice that when we were down on the field. I wish I had known, by the way, that the grass was the same grass as Wrigley and Guaranteed Rate, because that would have made that experience being down on the grass even more special. But my background's in graphic design, and I love sort of the regional advertising, especially when it's blown up all big on an outfield wall. And so, yeah, when we were down there on the field, I was definitely noticing the preponderance of ads. You know, it felt very sort of very nostalgic minor league baseball, right? Like
Mhm.
it really felt like the real deal with minor league baseball for sure. So,
Yeah.
well, Michael, I have taken up more of your time than I meant to. Thank you so much for A, letting me into your air conditioned office earlier this year, and B, for taking time out of your schedule this morning. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Where can people find the Boomers online and on social media?
Boomersbaseball.com or at boomersbaseball.
That's super easy. Brand synergy. I love it. Michael, thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, welcome back. Here is designer extraordinaire Dan Simon, who is the proprietor of Studio Simon, the Louisville-based design firm responsible for so many great minor league baseball logos, including this here Schaumburg Boomers logo. Dan, good morning. Hello, how are you?
Good morning to you, Paul. I am fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing so well since the last time we spoke, just a few minutes ago. Hey, we're talking about the Schaumburg Boomers. This brand is based on a bird called the prairie chicken, and there's some really distinctive things about this bird. We're going to talk to Ranger Amy Burnett later on in this episode about that prairie chicken. But the decision, Dan, to go with this very distinctive looking bird for sure to represent Schaumburg, Illinois. This brand came out in 2012, so we're just sort of ramping up the era of wacky minor league baseball logos. We had a few by then. What went into the decision to represent Schaumburg with this very distinctive bird?
The reason for prairie chicken was largely due to an inability on my part to find other appropriate or effective ideas or themes for this brand identity. When we are trying to come up with a name and a theme for a new professional baseball club brand identity, we do a deep dive into that city, community, region, and to a lesser extent, maybe the state. And we're looking for things like, well, basically what makes that city, region unique. And that could come from, whatever industry or industries it's known for, famous people that were born there or are associated with that place, food items, regional or things specific to that particular city, and other things. And unfortunately, when it came to Schaumburg, there was not a heck of a lot to draw from, both literally and figuratively.
That's a good point.
Because what Schaumburg is, it's a bedroom community for the city of Chicago. What it does have, it has an airport that is right next to the stadium. But we weren't going to go with an aviation themed name because the previous owner was he left a lot of vendors and I believe the city unpaid. And he had a hightail out of town. And there was what the new ownership needed to do was make a clean break from the previous ownership. They didn't want to keep the name the Schaumburg Flyers or use another aviation name because they really wanted to disassociate themselves with what preceded their ownership. So that's one of the things that Schaumburg had was the airport. The other thing they have is a very big shopping mall. And I think they did solicit ideas from the community, and one of the names that seemed to come up a lot was the Maulers because of the big shopping mall there. But the ownership did not want to put their eggs in the shopping mall basket, so we weren't going to name them after the shopping mall.
Schaumburg, though, is a suburb of Chicago. Was the interest there in distinguishing it from Chicago, or could you have, glommed on to something Chicago-y? Like during the Curved Brim Media meetup, after the game there, we all went to a Lou Malnati's pizza, right? Like, and enjoyed some deep dish Chicago-style pizza. Was the goal of the team to find something that was distinctive to Schaumburg, but not specific to Chicago?
The short answer to that question is yes.
Yeah.
They were, yeah, it's, what, there's nothing wrong with glomming on to Chicago, but they wanted something ideally that was going to be theirs and not Chicago's. So diving even deeper into the history of Schaumburg, we went back to before it was really a city. What it was prairie. And what was ubiquitous on the prairie, I guess, in addition to buffaloes, were prairie chickens. I have to admit, until I embarked on my explorations into this particular brand identity development, I had never heard of a prairie chicken. But when you do your research, you find things obviously you didn't know before. And at one time, prairie chickens were as ubiquitous on the prairie as I guess squirrels are in my neighborhood. They're just all over the place. And I mentioned to the team, so okay, we've got this thing, prairie chickens, and they are a very unique looking fowl.
Yeah.
Uh, However, their name is, I'm sorry, yes, the name, it's kind of a bit long for a team, the Schaumburg Prairie Chickens.
It's a mouthful.
So the other thing that I'm sure Ranger Amy is going to discuss, so this is at the risk of being redundant, although she will be redundant because I'm going to say it first.
Yeah, you're going to be predundant.
Yes. Is that a thing? If not, that was
It
very
is
clever.
now. It's a word if we said it.
Okay. That's pretty funny. They do this mating dance. As unique as they are in visual appearance, this mating dance is also unique. And the mating dance, like with, I guess, lots of creatures out there who have some type of mating ritual, it's done to attract the females. And so the males do this mating dance called booming. And so, given booming, that would make a prairie chicken a boomer. And this was before being a boomer really was associated, even though there was the baby boom generation, it didn't have quite the connotations.
This was before the popularity of the phrase "Okay, boomer."
Exactly. Now, also, when it's a sort of a baseball term, somebody hits a big home run, a well-struck home run. It's a booming shot.
Yeah.
Also, there are or were a couple of players. Now, again, this is 12 years ago, so their careers were a little bit more close to the time that we were doing this identity. David Wells, former pitcher for, amongst other teams, the Yankees and the Blue Jays, and it was Cincinnati Reds, doesn't even matter. He played for a number of teams. David Wells' nickname was Boomer.
Yeah.
Prior to him, a player from the 60s and 70s played for the Boston Red Sox, Milwaukee Brewers, and I would imagine some other teams. A very good major leaguer, a slugging first baseman named George Scott. His nickname was Boomer. So there were baseball players who had that nickname. The team liked the idea of prairie chickens, liked the name Boomers, and there we had it.
So, as a visual artist here, you're creating this brand that's based on this very distinctive bird. The logo that you came up with, often you'll, as when you're creating a logo, it's almost like a caricature of these animals. You didn't have to do that with this bird, right? Like it's got the booming comes from these great big orange sacs basically on its neck, chin, cheek area. It's got these sort of orange brows, or lines over the top of its head. If you were watching me, listener, you would see that I'm making all sorts of wild hand gesticulations here while I'm trying to describe this. It's got these very tall, sort of pointy. They look like ears, even though I'm sure they are not actually ears, because that's not how birds work, I don't think. But regardless, very brightly colored, distinctive looking animals that you didn't really have to caricature to make this logo. I mean, you just sort of drew an illustrative, realistic image of it in a way. Was that your approach, or am I imagining that?
That's exactly what it was. It's such a unique looking bird. It's actually a little busy, all of these different features about it. But what we were trying, what we do when we're designing logos for sports brand identities is you try to simplify that down as much as possible. And it just, it's so unique, visually striking. Those things on the top of its head you were describing as kind of looking like ears. I guess those are more like tufts of feathers, but they look like ears or horns or something like that. It's just the colors. Was a great subject for a brand identity, and certainly unique. There are a lot of bird identities out there on the sports branding landscape, and because of that, there are some logos out there that kind of are reminiscent of other logos already out there. It's one of the problems with doing a bird-themed identity in today's sports branding landscape. But this one stands out from those. I'm not saying better, I'm just saying different because it's so visually different.
I was going to ask that question about this, right? Like if you're I was not familiar with prairie chickens, and I don't know how sort of well known they are outside maybe this region of the country or just sort of even in that region of the country. If you're doing an eagle, if you're doing a hawk, you can get more stylized, more abstract because people will recognize it because they're more familiar with it to begin with. Did you have to do a more realistic prairie chicken because perhaps it's not as familiar to folks and you still wanted it to be recognizable? Am I putting words in your mouth?
No, but that's an interesting thought. I will tell you this. I don't know if this answers your question, but there's a secondary logo that is part of the identity that I don't know if the team uses it much or even used it much. I'm not even sure if it's something they employ in their marketing and merchandising, where it's a silhouette of the prairie chicken standing on a bat. So if you picture like a weather vane that has a lot of weather vanes have birds on top, but because it's a weather vane, they're silhouettes of birds. I guess that was what I was thinking of when I was doing this. And just doing a one color silhouette of the prairie chicken, it still is just the shape of it is unique that even if you're not familiar with a prairie chicken, you get that this is a different kind of bird.
I think for me, the thing that's so interesting about this was just that I was not familiar with that bird before I saw this logo.
As ubiquitous as prairie chickens once were to the prairie, there are no prairie chickens in that area anymore. But there are still places, and that's basically because development. What was once prairie is now a bedroom community.
It's now Schaumburg.
Right. But there are somewhere in the United States, there are still people raising prairie chickens. And I remember when I was doing this, developing this brand identity, in my research, I saw that there was a travel company that arranged tours specifically for people to see prairie chickens doing their booming. Because it was interesting enough, I guess people wanted to see these prairie chickens doing their thing. So they're still out there, but in, I guess, same way that buffalo are still out there, but they used to be, whereas there used to be millions of them, now they're in far fewer places.
Yeah.
And in far fewer numbers.
Yeah, they've both bison or buffalo and the prairie chickens have been, pushed west. Anyhow, we'll go talk to Ranger Amy about that. But Dan, before we do talk to Ranger Amy, this is really fun for me. Our mutual friend Anna DiTommaso hosts the Baseball Bucket List podcast, and she had a guest on recently who said something that genuinely moved me, and I asked her if I could include it on my podcast as well. And because this guest talks a little bit about hoping one day to be part of the Curved Brim Media meetup, I thought I would drop it in here before we go talk to Ranger Amy from Schaumburg during the Curved Brim Media meetup. Anna's recent guest on her podcast was a woman named Erin Kane, and she talked about how she and her boyfriend met and bonded over this here Baseball by Design podcast. And I was so touched by it. I reached out to Anna and I said, hey, would you mind if I included this on my podcast? Just this little snippet here, just a 2-minute snippet from Anna DiTommaso's Baseball Bucket List podcast. We're going to do that, and then we're going to get to Ranger Amy live from Schaumburg, and then you'll be back with a Studio Simon Stumper.
Okay, I'm looking forward to hearing that clip, and I am looking forward to coming back for that stumper. So I'll see you in a little bit.
See you in a bit.
You mentioned before that you're now kind of bringing your boyfriend along on this trip. Sounds like he's buying in. How did you kind of sweet talk him into joining you on this adventure?
Yeah, so we connected over Curved Brim Media. So we are both lifelong baseball fans. He played collegiate level baseball. He is a diehard Milwaukee Brewers fan, I'm trying to convert him. I don't think it will happen. But we connected over Curved Brim Media because we were both listening to Paul Caputo's Baseball by Design. And as we were starting our relationship early on, we would talk about the latest episode. Did you listen to the latest episode? What did you think? Did you like that logo? So it really got us excited about minor league baseball. And listening to Paul's podcast, we wanted to visit these places because Paul makes them sound magical. So there was no dragging along. It was more racing each other to get to these parks. And of course, because of Paul, he now had to get the ice cream helmet sundaes. So every park we visit, he gets the ice cream helmet sundae, and he started a little shelf to display these. So Curved Brim Media has been kind of the foundation of our relationship, but it's also helping us, grow because we get to travel together to see all these different places, which is pretty awesome.
That's an incredible story. A Curved Brim love story. I love it. It's that makes me smile from ear to ear, as you can tell. What's his name?
His name is Alex. And we both have on our bucket list making it out to the Curved Brim baseball meetup.
That's a great one to put on there. We would love to meet you face to face, obviously. So what a great story. I love that so much.
Live from Wintrust Field in Schaumburg, Illinois, I am honored to present to you official Baseball by Design wildlife correspondent, musical enthusiast, and national anthem extraordinaire, Ranger Amy Burnett.
All right, everyone. Greetings from Schaumburg, Illinois, home of the Schaumburg Boomers. We are here on the Curved Brim Media meetup we've had like 30 people at a couple of games here. We saw the Chicago Dogs yesterday.
Yeah.
Check the back catalog for an episode on the Chicago Dogs. We've never covered the Boomers, the Schaumburg Boomers, on the podcast. So I'm here with the wildlife correspondent for Baseball by Design, Ranger Amy Burnett. Ranger Amy, how are you?
Hey, it's good to be here.
It is great to be here right now because guess what? It's a sunny, beautiful day. It's hot, but we're in the shade and there's a breeze.
And
So
all the foul balls are coming our way.
we are getting peppered with foul balls.
Foul
Yeah,
balls.
foul balls.
Foul balls.
That's foul balls, not owl balls, which we will get into.
Yes.
Speaking of which, one of our very own Curved Brim Media meetup participants here, Lynn Smith, is sitting right behind us. She got a foul ball. Good job, Lynn.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Matter.
But anyway, the Schaumburg Boomers, I said not owl balls, foul balls, because I thought they were an owl for a long time this
Yeah, you're
spring.
like, this kind of, a boomer is a kind of owl.
I was
like,
faked
what
out.
the
Oh, that
hell?
ball's coming right at us.
It might fall down. Oh, wow.
I thought we might get that. I thought that one might roll off the roof there.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Why did I think this was an owl?
But I have no idea.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I thought the ears kind of looked owlish.
Oh, I see. Like a great horned owl, like they have those
It looked a little bit like a green.
feathers stick up like that.
Right,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Sure.
It's not an
Okay.
owl though. What
Yep.
is a boomer?
A boomer is a prairie chicken.
Now batting for the Boomers, shortstop number 7, Alec Craig.
It's a prairie chicken. What's a prairie chicken?
A prairie chicken is a kind of grouse. And if you don't know what a grouse is, it's related to pheasants.
A grouse is me going, I had to get Dippin' Dots to get an ice cream helmet. I'm grousing.
Grousing.
All right, it's a kind of grouse. And then what did you say?
If you don't know what a grouse is, it's related to pheasants. No,
It's related to
It's
pheasants.
a kind of exotic fowl. Like it's one of those birds that is hunted. And
Okay.
people eat them. So
Okay.
People eat them.
Now, it's a prairie chicken. It's not an owl. People eat them. It's a little game bird.
Yeah, game bird.
Why are they called the boomers, though? What does that even mean?
All right, so they have this the males have this mating display where they jump up and down and they fluff their tail feathers, and the most important thing that they do is that they inflate their air sacs and then they go boom, and they make a booming sound when they deflate them. And then they dance, do a little dance, and they impress the females.
And the chicks dig this.
They love it. The chicks do dig it.
Wow, okay.
I see what you did there.
Chicks dig the long ball at a baseball game, but except the boomer chicks dig a big boom when it comes from their male counterparts.
They do like the boom.
The boom, okay.
Yep.
All right.
But it's really cute. They hop up and down, they do a little circular dance, and the male shakes a tail feather. It's adorable. It really is adorable. And people come from all over to see prairie chickens dance, and the mating grounds are called Leks, L-E-K.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they just, it's a kind of a birdwatcher's thing.
What about the colors here? We know that Dan Simon created this logo. They're orange and black.
I really like the fact that he sort of used the real colors instead of just, he could have gone off in any different direction, but orange and yellow feature prominently in the bird, and he got in the logo in black. And it's a pretty brightly colored bird as far as the face goes. The back is not so crazy colored. And they can easily hide in those tall grass prairies. So when you're a male, you want to stick out, because otherwise you get kind of hidden in the grass and no one sees you.
Speaking of making a noise, the Boomers have loaded the bases with one out here in the bottom of the sixth. They're down 10-5 right now.
I don't think they're going to come back.
You don't know. There's a lot of runs scored at this level here.
Number 3, Christian Fetko.
You have a lot of optimism right now.
I don't know. I'm rooting for the home team.
Yeah, you gotta root for them.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
What about like a prairie chicken? Like I hear a boomer and I'm like, wow, that's badass. But then I hear prairie chicken and I'm less intimidated by a prairie chicken.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting choice for a team because it's not like you're ooh, I'm shaking my boots. It's like prairie chicken.
Yeah. So tell me about the prairie chicken though. Like, what are the qualities of a prairie chicken? Even though the name doesn't sound super intimidating, surely there's something about a prairie chicken that makes it a good baseball mascot.
Well, they're resilient, I would say.
Ah, all right.
They're kind of specialists. They don't live just anywhere. So unfortunately, they're kind of declining in their range, especially the lesser prairie chicken. There are only 38,000 left in the world. Okay. So
I think that means they're the fewer prairie chicken. I'm sorry for making a joke about declining bird populations.
There are a lot of greater prairie chickens, so that's the good news. So the important thing to know is that they live in grasslands, and grasslands are disappearing in this country. And 95% of the area where these prairie chickens live is privately owned. But the good thing about this, even though 95% of this land is owned privately, there are organizations like Bird Conservancy of the Rockies that are working with landowners to say, hey, if you just grow some of this, let some of this grass grow, and not let trees grow in this area, because everyone thinks that trees are great, but for these prairie chickens, they can't live where there are trees. They need to have grassland.
They need prairies.
They need prairies. Yeah. So prairie chickens are actually in a better place than they were like 50 years ago, because people are actually like, oh, okay, this is what this bird eats. So in the long run, we're going to have more boomers and these birds that are really cool to watch because people are interested in them. So it's kind of cool that a team is actually, bringing attention to a little known bird.
So they're resilient.
They're resilient.
Do they have any other qualities?
They're specialists.
They're specialists?
They're
okay,
specialists.
Very good. Like a left-handed reliever.
Yep, they're show-offs, which is good. So
yeah,
it might be a little bit like the banana ballers of the baseball world,
Okay, I see.
They're showing off a little bit.
All right.
They have brightly colored faces, so that's kind of cool. Now, how many birds have orange and black and white in them? That's kind of cool.
Right. So, a little like the Delmarva shorebirds.
Yeah, they're charismatic. People who like prairie chickens really like prairie chickens, and they're delicious. So
that's also important. Guess what? They don't serve them here, though.
No, but I hear it tastes like beef.
Really?
It's like a dark meat.
That's interesting. It's like the reverse of how it normally goes.
So obviously they don't eat the lesser prairie chickens because those are pretty rare. But a lot of people like to eat the greater prairie chickens.
Okay. All right. Last thing here, not about this team or this mascot, but this is you've experienced a bunch of firsts on our Chicagoland baseball trip here, including your first ever stint at Wrigley. You saw your first ever Chicago Cubs game at Wrigley.
Cool.
Last night we went to see the Chicago Dogs. Your first real, I would say, significant experience in the greater Chicagoland area.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think of Wrigley? What do you think of the food, the pizza, all the things?
I liked the pizza. The beef dish was really delicious. There's some in the trunk of the car. I'm I'm hoping that it's good enough to eat.
Yeah.
And we don't get food poisoning because
No.
I'm hungry.
Right.
So we'll have some of that, on our way back home.
That was Lou Malnati's, by the way.
Oh my God, it was
Iconic
delicious.
pizza place.
It was delicious. The one thing that struck me about Chicago that I wasn't expecting is, I think of Chicago as an old city, and I thought of it as sort of old, and it's not. It's like a happening city.
Right.
It's very up and coming. There are a lot of people having fun. They're really celebrating summer here. They're getting into it. The waterfront's beautiful. A lot of young people around. It was a cool city.
Lake Michigan, we did the architecture tour at night. That was incredible. That was a great
going
time.
on the river at night is just beautiful. So
Yeah.
I liked everything lit up with the pride colors. It's Pride Month, so all the buildings, rainbow colors.
You get to see cool parts of the country on the Curved Brim Media meetup every summer. So
It's nice. People are having fun.
people are having fun. The natives are getting a little bit restless. Ranger Amy, let's get back to the rest of the game here. It's almost time to sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," which we love the most.
There we go. We do.
So, Ranger Amy, thanks very much. Let's enjoy the rest of the game.
All right, let's do it.
All right, everyone, welcome back. It is time once again for my favorite segment, your favorite segment on the Baseball by Design podcast, Studio Simon Stumpers, in which Dan Simon brings us a trivia question every single week, whether it's a logo he designed or not. In this episode, Dan, it is a logo that you designed, the Schaumburg Boomers. So what do we got? What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about prairie chickens. We're going to talk about something to do with Chicago, something to do with prairies, something to do with bedroom communities. We keep using that phrase, bedroom communities. What are we going to talk about today with our Studio Simon Stumper?
One of the things we mentioned is that this brand identity was done, I think we said 12 years ago. And so we're going to talk a bit about that's not all that long ago. But what's kind of impressive is that, speaking of time, that the Frontier League, it's been around for a while. They began play back in 1993. So this is, 32 years, I guess, 33, their 33rd season. That's a pretty good run for an independent minor league baseball league. So they began play in their inaugural season. There were 8 teams, none of which are still around.
Oh.
None of the original 8 are around. Today, the league has 18 teams in 10 states. That's pretty impressive. Normally, these independent leagues, even the affiliated minor leagues, they have smaller footprints than 10 states. Plus, they have 3 teams in Canada. So that's a pretty big footprint. But what we're going to talk about is teams that have been around the longest. So as I mentioned, none of the 8 original teams are around, but our Studio Simon Stumper today asks, which of these current Frontier League teams is the longest tenured team in league history? Now, I mentioned there's 18 teams, so as Studio Simon Stumpers, I limit it to 3 choices. So here are the 3 teams. Is it A, the Quebec Capitals? I'm assuming you as a French minor in college, the French pronunciation is Capitals. It's spelled with an ES at the end.
Yes, although you would not pronounce the S, so you would say it would be the Quebec Capitale.
Oh, really? Okay.
Even pluralized, you don't pronounce that S, yeah.
Okay, well, okay, thank you for correcting me then. The Quebec Capitale. B, the Gateway Grizzlies, or C, the Evansville Otters.
I know that the Otters, I believe, play in a ballpark that has been around a long, long, long time, but I don't know that necessarily means that the Otters themselves have been around for that long, and I don't think that they have. I don't think it's the Otters. Dan, in 2001, I actually tried to move to Montreal, and it didn't work out. I spent about 6 weeks there. Didn't end up, finding work or really finding a way to make that happen. But it was, I thought I was young and hip and trying to do something interesting, and it didn't work out. But in 2001, driving around my little Nissan Sentra with Virginia plates, I went to a Montreal Expos game, and I went to a Quebec Capitale game, which means that the Quebec Capitale have existed since at least 2001. I don't know if the Gateway Grizzlies or the Evansville Otters go back quite that far, but I know from my own human experience and from actually attending one game there that Quebec has had that team since 2001. So I am going to go Capital, final answer.
Okay. Now I feel bad because I think now with the benefit of you, that sussing right there, I think this was a misleading question.
Oh,
Okay. Because you are correct. The Capitals have been around for a while. As a matter of fact, they've existed since 1999.
okay, but not in that league.
Right.
They were in the Can-Am League.
Well, they began play in the Northern League.
Okay.
Later also played in the Northeast League and then the Can-Am League before joining the Frontier League in 2020. So they're relatively new to the Frontier League, yet but you know what? The correct answer to this question is a team that is older than the Quebec Capitals, but I was actually trying to help you with this by there are other teams that like kind of go back a number of years in the Frontier League, but I was trying to give you ones that were not as close to the correct answer. The correct answer is the Evansville Otters. They played their inaugural season in the Frontier League in 1995,
Ooh.
2 years after the league played its inaugural season. So that means they're celebrating their 30th anniversary this year.
Yeah.
And that's a
long time.
The longest tenured team in the league, and still older than the Quebec Capitals. By the way, the Gateway Grizzlies, they are currently the third longest tenured team in the league, having played their inaugural season in 2001. So they're still 6 years younger than the Evansville Otters. Now, you mentioned the stadium. I have made a trip to that stadium. It's about a 2-hour drive from here. It's called Bosse Field.
Yeah.
It opened in 1915, making it the third oldest ballpark still in regular use for professional baseball. They're behind only Fenway Park, which opened in 1912, and Wrigley Field, which opened in 1914. Now, there's also a stadium that we've been to together, Rickwood Field in Birmingham. That one opened in 1910.
Ooh.
But even though it's still being used, as we know, the Birmingham Barons, who were playing in that stadium, they played in Hoover outside of Birmingham, and then they got a new downtown ballpark built in Birmingham. So that's where they play their games. They used to play the Rickwood Classic at Rickwood Field every year. They stopped playing that for some reason that I don't know. But now that the stadium has been renovated for the Major League game that was played there, 2 years ago? I don't know, maybe they play the Rickwood Classic again. But the point is, that's the oldest stadium that still exists, oldest baseball stadium that still exists in the United States, but it's not in regular use. So by the way, that also makes, because the stadiums that are older than Bosse Field, the Fenway Park and Wrigley Field, are major league stadiums, it makes Bosse Field the oldest ballpark in regular use in the minor leagues.
That's very cool. And they have an adorable logo. The Evansville Otters do. I find their logo to be adorable. And sometimes, Dan, I'll whiff on one of these and it makes me feel bad. This is one where not only did I get to brag about having been to Montreal Expos and Quebec Capital game, but I don't feel bad because I sort of forgot about the switching of the leagues that the Capital did. But those are three old teams in the Frontier League right there. I mean, whether they've been actually in the Frontier League that whole time. Those are some old teams in the Frontier League. So good on the Frontier League for having some well-established teams out there.
Hey, yes, I did not. I remember at least some of the original Frontier League teams. And in doing my research for this stumper, one of the things I learned, so I just told you the longest tenured team in the league is the Evansville Otters, or are the Evansville Otters. The shortest lived team ever to play in the league were the West Virginia Coal Sox. They lasted less than 2 weeks. They played 10 games and went under. So,
My
no,
goodness.
coincidentally, one of the things I've mentioned on this podcast before, more than once, is that both you and I grew up in a town called Wayne, you in Wayne, Pennsylvania, me in Wayne, New Jersey. Well, the West Virginia Coal Sox played at a high school field, Pioneer Field, at Wayne County High School in Wayne, West Virginia. Population 1,100. One of the reasons why that team may not have lasted as long as they had hoped it would.
This guy, Mad Anthony Wayne, really did get around and leaving his namesake all over the country here. So, Dan, as always, this is a ton of fun. Thank you so much for all the work you do to prepare these stumpers for us. Thanks for agreeing to come on and talk about these brands from more than a decade ago that you created. And thanks for being part of Baseball by Design. We'll see you next week.
I'll see you then.